Hey, welcome back to the 167. We're here with 7 Minute Stories with a good friend of mine, Rich Brown, who is an elder here at New Life Community Church, and he runs our Celebrate Recovery program, which deals with hurts, habits, and hangups. It's our addiction support and recovery group. It's part of our Find Freedoms ministry. Why don't you tell everybody hi, Rich?
Hi.
So, Rich is going to be sharing his 7 minute story today, something that happened recently with you during COVID. And so, we're just going to have a time for 7 minutes where you get to tell your story, and hopefully it will inspire other people and tell us something that we need to know about you and how you're interacting with God these days. Are you ready?
Yep.
All right, go for it.
Thanks, Pastor Lucas. I really want to share about my experience with COVID last year, actually this year. It kind of started in mid-December. I was used to having a respiratory crud at the end of the year, and so I didn't think too much about it. I was very conscious of COVID. I wasn't afraid of it, but I was very conscious of it. I had done a lot of reading and looking at the different issues, and so as I felt myself starting to get sick, I looked at the symptoms. Well, I didn't really have a fever. I never lost my sense of taste or smell, but I never really got any better. Things kept getting worse. I finally called the doctor, and we did the testing, and I ended up going into the hospital on December 27th, the Sunday after Christmas. After a week in the hospital, being on remdesivir, the antiviral, whatever else they used, it wasn't doing any better, and they felt like I had to go on the ventilator. So I went into ICU on January the 3rd, and while on the ventilator, I had a near-death experience that really changed my life in some significant ways. So in this near-death experience, I woke up while I was on the ventilator, and I found myself floating in between. I wasn't dead, but I wasn't here, and I wasn't there. And I was floating over something that I've come since to recognize was what Jesus described as outer darkness. It was like kind of grayish, and underneath it was absolute black. You don't want to be there. But up in front of me was what was really catching my attention, was a enormous wall. The colors were so vibrant, brilliant, fantastic. You can use any words that you want to describe them, but you can't really describe what this wall looked like. And it was huge. I could not see either end. If you think of a computer screen, it ran off the screen in three directions. You couldn't see the top of it. You couldn't see on either end, either side, east or west. And underneath it was just a little thin, kind of darkish brown line that I would call a foundation. This wall, besides being multicolored, was kind of translucent. It glowed. You could tell that there was light inside of it. And it was just, I don't use this word very often, but it was awesome. It was awesome. And so while I'm floating there looking at this awesome wall, I said, God, I've done everything I can do, and I can't do anything else. I'm done. If you're going to do anything, now would be a good time. And I know in my heart that's when my physical situation changed, and I started physically to get better. But the real, just as much a part of the miracle of this experience was that as I regained consciousness, I was on the ventilator for 7 days, in the hospital another 5, and then rehab, and I got out altogether on January 27th, exactly a month. But as I regained consciousness, I became aware that not only had God healed my body, but he had changed my heart. You see, I grew up in a pastor's home. I'm one of those dreaded PKs.
Oh, yeah, I feel your pain on that. Pastor's kids for life.
Yeah. So I knew all the words. I knew the game. I knew how it was played. I can remember telling my father as a young child that I wanted to be a preacher just like him. Obviously, I wasn't, and I'm not. But I was saved as an adult on the third Sunday of August in 1989. And in January the next year, God broke the chains of my porn addiction that had been with me since high school. And as I became aware coming out of this experience, not only did God heal my body, but He healed my heart. And
But you said you got a word, right? That he had given you a new heart.
hmm yes, scripturally in Ezekiel, it talks about God says that He will replace our hearts of stone with a heart of flesh. Um, Jesus talks about the new birth, receiving a new heart, um, and I know that that's what happened. A couple of changes in my life coming before that. It's not that I wouldn't share my story or my faith in Christ with anyone, but I had to be very sure that I wasn't going to offend anyone, and I really wasn't going to talk about a porn habit. That didn't seem like a good introductory
Right.
thing. And but coming out of this, suddenly that didn't matter. And where God changed my heart is whatever it was that drove me to that way back longer ago was gone. And it's not that I hadn't asked Him to take it from me. I had, since 1990, countless times. I asked God to change my heart. And then this is the last change, the last thing that really has blown me away about this experience is that one of the verses that came to my mind in the hospital was in Isaiah, God speaking through the prophet several times, but in one place He says, I'm God. There's no one like me. Who else can tell the end from the beginning and make it happen? That's a poor paraphrase, but it's the sense of it is that God knows what's going to happen before it happens, and He makes it happen. And as I have thought about that, I'm convinced that the reason God didn't change my heart back in 1990 because He knew all along what was going to happen, and He planned it that way, and that blows me away. I have a greater sense of God's sovereignty and who He is than I've ever had before.
It's the who sinned, or why is this man blind? Who sinned, him and his parents? He said,
Exactly.
neither. It's so that the glory of God could be shown in this moment.
Exactly.
Well, what is something that you just want to tell people, like your last 2% of this story? You feel like God's given you a new heart. He's given you a boldness to share your story. Is there any last thing that you want to say, any last words to everybody else when they're listening to this story?
I would tell people you can never overestimate how good God is. God is a healer, and He wants to heal your body, He wants to heal your soul, and He wants to heal your mind. Sometimes healing is instantaneous, and almost always being in community with a group of people who will help support you as you who will help support you as you learn to live in your freedom is a good thing. And that's a good part of what Celebrate Recovery is about, a community of people that have been there. They're not going to judge you. They're just going to walk with you on your journey.
Excellent. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this 7-minute story. Like I said, Rich is one of our elders here, and he leads Celebrate Recovery. And if you're interested in that, it's Tuesdays at 7 p.m. here at New Life Community Church. Rich, thanks for coming on and sharing your story.
Glad to.